that were happening with this dodgy dossier, which was first debuted in September 2016 as a way of damaging the Trump campaign and basically destroying myself. And so, you know, and he always seemed very sympathetic about that. So, yeah. Again, you know, we'll see. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. People that know him in Washington, in senior circles that I've spoken with afterwards, say, you know, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. So I give.
That would be the perfect person to use for maybe I'm just cynical, been around Washington too long. Carter, if only they gave you the benefit of the doubt, like you're giving other people the benefit of the doubt. Michael, let's go to you. You've been through the meat grinder at the Mueller investigation. He has the legal eagles, all these really highly skilled interviewers, prosecutors on his side. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them, I believe, have a built-in animus against Donald Trump. You are very angry that you've been dragged into this as a former associate of Roger Stone. You also did some work for the Trump campaign. Tell us what you think. You just heard what Carter said about this, you know, reported informant for the FBI.
Well, I think Carter's been through more of a meat grinder than I have, and he's handled it as a gentleman. In fact, when I first heard about this stuff, I think in 2016, 2017, about Carter, I wasn't very kind in my criticism, and I think, you know, it looks like they were really abusing Carter. I think they were really treating him poorly, and I think a lot of us owe Carter an apology because we didn't wait to hear the truth at the end, and now we're finding out that his country was really failing him for months and months and even years. I'm angry. I'm surprised that Carter's not. He's a greater man than I think. But I'll tell you, this is really sick and twisted stuff. And like Carter said, this gentleman who shall not be named has a reputation of being very pro-America, very patriotic. And if, in fact, you know, he was brought into this under false circumstances or false pretenses as well, he'd be the kind of guy that a deep state would target.
Yeah. Well, the dossier was the basis for getting this FISA warrant. I don't care what these people say. It was all a big lie. Without this dossier, Carter Page would not have been surveilled in the fall of 2016. That would not have happened. That's why they were running to that Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska, to try to get him involved. And he's like, I don't even like Paul Manafort. This is ridiculous. So they were doing everything they could. They were working the Page angle. They probably were working this informant angle. And they brought you in, Michael, which we'll get to in a moment. But I want to play for you what Sally Yates, the acting attorney general at the very beginning of the Trump administration, she's the one partly responsible for interviewing Michael Flynn at the beginning, what she said today on Morning Joe. Let's watch.
I think what we're seeing here is the president has just taken his all-out assault on the rule of law to a new level. Mm-hmm. And this time, he is ordering up an investigation of the investigators who are examining his own campaign. You know, that's really shocking. Rod Rosenstein is trying to strike a balance here between diffusing this situation, but also protecting the rule of law and the institutional integrity of the department.
Carter Page, as I pointed out in the opening angle, the government under the Obama administration had surveilled people and lied about it. And whether it was Clapper, whether it was the FBI under Holder, surveilling journalists, they have a history of having a problem telling the truth on surveillance. So for Sally Yates to run out there and say, oh, well, this Donald Trump's attacking the rule of law, come on, your reaction.
Well, you know, just going to Michael's point about, you know, things they did to me, President Trump during the campaign would often say, this is not about me, this is about us. And I think of all of the terrible things that happened to so many people like Michael, like, you know, some of the other people who were involved allegedly with this informant. I actually, you know, spoke very positively. I got a positive impression about this informant, and you know, a couple of the people I mentioned him to in the campaign, you know, I was a pretty positive endorsement. So I hope and pray that, you know, all these allegations turn out to be false. And part of why I'm somewhat open about my communications with him is that it'll lead to some truth finally from the Department of Justice. I've been asking for, you know, DOJ to own up to these things. And it's funny, the defamation suit I have against a top media organization and DOJ, the media organization is actually much more honest than the false pleadings by the DOJ so far. Right. So hopefully they clean up.
We got to play this James Clapper for Michael. He's basically just justifying the use of any type of informant here. Let's watch.
The focus here, and as it was with the intelligence community, is not on the campaign per se, but what the Russians were doing to try to instantiate themselves in the campaign or to influence or leverage it. So if there was someone that was observing that sort of thing, well, that's a good thing because the Russians pose a threat to the very basis of our political system.
Michael, so you see a pattern here? Former Obama administration officials justifying spying on, surveilling, whatever you want to call it, putting a mole in on an opposing campaign and a hotly contested election year. Final thoughts.
I'll tell you, you've spent time in Russia. Carter and I both have. In Russia, they call this Siloviki, the national security leadership that secretly spies on the entire citizenry of Russia. And here we are in the United States with our own Siloviki underneath President Obama. Let me tell you something that I know for a fact. This informant, this person that they tried to plan into the campaign and even into the administration, if you believe Axios, he's not the only person that came at the campaign. And the FBI is not the only Obama agency that came at the campaign. I know because they came at me. And I'm looking for clearance from my attorney to reveal this to the public. This is just the beginning. And I'll tell you, when we finally find out the truth about this, Director Clapper and the rest of them are going to be wearing some orange suits.
Michael Caputo and Carter Page, I hope we get to the bottom of this a lot sooner than a lot of people are predicting, because the American people deserve to know who is behind this, who authorized it, and how high up the ladder it went. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Laura.
All right.